Today, we're going to look at the work of Christopher Hitchens, but maybe in a way you haven't before. We're not just looking at his commentary, we're going to use his essays almost like a set of X-ray glasses to map out the systems that are constantly shaping and, let's be honest, often distorting our perception of the world.
So, just to be clear, this is not a book summary, and it's definitely not advice. What this is a structural analysis. We're going to try and look at the actual machinery behind how public perception gets built, how it's maintained, and, well, how it's often deliberately fogged up.
All right, so let's start with the symptom, the thing you can feel. Have you ever listened to a politician or maybe a cable news host, and you just get this feeling that the words they're using are designed to obscure things, not to clarify them, that they're meant to sort of numb you? That feeling, right there, is our starting point.
Hitchens absolutely nails it with this quote. He's talking about a kind of prefabricated and conditioned phraseology. You know, this public language that's just full of these pre-approved terms like bipartisanship or national interests or moving forward. These are way more than just words. They're actually tools that build what he calls the politics of the permissible. They literally draw the lines around what we're even allowed to think.
Okay, so if all that vague language and euphemism is the symptom, what's the actual system causing it? To really get our heads around this, we're going to use one central metaphor that I think makes the whole thing click into place.
I want you to picture the entire political and media world as a big theater. Now, the fog machine, it doesn't change the stage itself. The actors are still there, the set is the same, the script hasn't changed, that's reality. All the fog machine does is pump this atmosphere onto the stage that makes it really, really hard for the audience to see things clearly. And that fog, well, it's made of strategic language, ambiguity, and of course, secrecy.
And you can see the breakdown right here. On one side, you've got the fog. Its job is to distort what you can see, to create ambiguity. It's all about managing perception. And on the other side, you've got the stage. That's the actual underlying structure, the objective facts of the matter. The key insight here really is that the system doesn't have to change reality at all. It just has to manage how we perceive it.
So you have to ask, why does this machine keep running? It's really not some grand conspiracy. It's a system, and it's humming along because it runs on a very clear logic of incentives. Let's pull back the curtain and see who's benefiting from keeping that fog nice and thick.
So first up, of course, are the politicians. For them, especially when you're talking about a crisis or a war, using precise, clear language can be a huge liability. Ambiguity is actually a strategic tool.
Think about it. Vague language gives them room to maneuver. It gives them plausible deniability. It lets them build these big unity narratives, control what information gets out and when, and maybe most importantly, avoid being held directly accountable for tough decisions that would be really unpopular if they were just spelled out clearly.
All right, let's move on to the second group of actors here, the journalists. Now, you'd think their entire job would be to clear the fog away, but the system they work in, well, it often incentivizes the complete opposite.
You see, Hitchens describes this as a kind of simple blackmail. If you get too critical, if you push too hard, you lose your access to official sources. You're frozen out. You become, as he puts it, yesterday's papers. So the whole structure rewards what he calls a vernacular of deference, a certain way of talking that shows you're a serious person, that you're inside the consensus.
And this near-automatic deference is so important. It's not usually a conscious decision to mislead people. It's more of an unconscious adaptation to the incentives of the system. It just becomes the easiest path to keep your access and, well, keep your job.
And finally, we get to the institutions that are basically designed to operate entirely within the fog, the intelligence agencies.
For these agencies, secrecy isn't just a side effect of what they do, it's the whole point. It's what allows them to operate as this shadow government, a sort of state within a state that doesn't have to answer to Congress, the press, or the public in the same way.
So, you've got politicians, journalists, and intelligence agencies, and they all, in their own way, benefit from a certain level of fog. So what does that end up looking like for us, the people sitting in the audience? Well, the outcomes are pretty predictable, and honestly, a little depressing.
This line, right here, is one of the most chilling things Hitchens uncovers. He's talking about a moment when the U.S. secretly cut off aid to Kurdish rebels it had been supporting. But the official language isn't "we abandoned them to be slaughtered." No, the memo says the policy was "not imparted." It's so sterile, so bureaucratic. That's how the brutal reality of war gets sanitized and hidden right out in the open. And that's what the system pumps out. You get these clean, sanitized stories about war. You get a quiet, creeping acceptance of these shadow institutions that operate with almost no oversight. And you get this whole political culture that starts to value the appearance of consensus way more than honest, messy confrontation. And the we fallacy is one of the main tools for getting there. It creates this false sense of consensus. It papers over all the deep disagreements by pretending that we are all one big happy family with the exact same interests. And what that does is it makes dissent feel not just wrong, but almost disloyal. It's a really powerful way to make the conversation much, much smaller.
Okay, so this brings us right to the heart of it all, where we can finally define what the real crisis here actually is.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. What happens when we've all spent so much time looking at the world through this fog that we completely forget the fog is even there?
And that, right there, is the core of the problem. The real danger isn't that the fog machine exists. The crisis happens the moment we lose the ability to tell the difference between the fog, the atmospheric distortion, and the actual stage. It's when the perception management becomes our reality.
So the biggest takeaway here isn't about pointing fingers at a few corrupt individuals. It's about a flawed design. The whole system, connecting our politics, our media, and our national security, is built on a set of incentives that actively rewards fuzzy, obscure language and actually punishes clear, precise speech.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.